That then, let's go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Future-Oriented Approach to Residential Development Task Force. Item 2 on the agenda is citizens' appearances. Do we have anyone present to make an appearance? Nope, no one at the magic booth. Okay. Item number 3 is approval of minutes from December 9th, 2020. Those were attached to the agenda that was sent out. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at those?
I did. I looked at them. I would move that we approve them.
Okay, Peggy moves. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Russell seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
You opposed? Okay, yeah, I would assume none opposed. Okay, great. So minutes are approved. Agenda item number 4 is introductions. We have some new members, obviously. Cami, would you mind going through and just doing a roll call? That might be the best way to get everyone to introduce themselves. Just say a name and that person can then introduce themselves to everyone and then we can go on to the next person.
Sure, you bet. So first on my screen is Miss Peggy Quinn.
Hi, I'm Peggy Quinn. I've been on the board for a year. I'm in my second year on the board. I don't know what you want us to say other than that.
Introduce yourself to the nice people.
Yeah, maybe y'all should just mention it. Kind of helps give reference if you mention how long you've lived in Coppell.
Oh.
I've lived in Coppell since 91. So actually my house turns 30 this year. We had a little birthday party. So yeah.
Okay, so next on my screen, I have Russell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Russell Cowdery. I've lived in Coppell since 1994. This is my second year also on the board. I was really excited to be here because I participated in a lot of the 2040 planning. And so I think it's great that we're putting that to work. Personal stuff, I've had 9 children go through Coppell ISD. My last one graduates this May. So I'm very excited about that, Peggy.
Thank you, Russell. All right, next I have Sheila.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be on. This is my first time being a part of this committee. I've been in Coppell for about 3 years now, and I have a 5-year-old about to go to first grade. So pretty excited about that.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, next I've got Subbu.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm Subbu Venkat. I've been in Coppell for 5 years now. My youngest one goes to Lakeside. She's in 5th grade. Yeah, she's in 5th grade. With all the virtual learning, I'm losing track of that. So she's in 5th grade. I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you and welcome. All right, next I've got Yvonne.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Silva. I've lived in Coppell since 1994. I've been a part of both Vision 2030 and 2040, and I'm an ally. So I love our beautiful community.
Thank you, Yvonne. And I've got Kamesh.
Hi, this is Kamesh Subbarao. I've been in the North Texas area since 2003, but we moved to Coppell in 2014. It was just across. We used to live across 635. Now we just came north of 635. So this is my first time on this committee, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. All right, and Bart.
Yes, thank you. My name is Bart Mcelroy. This is my second year on the committee. I've lived in Coppell since 2000. Previously, I served on the Board of Adjustment, and the sort of things we discuss here are just, I love discussing. They're right up my alley, and I've really enjoyed working with everyone and look forward to working with all of our new members.
Thank you. Mindy?
Thank you, Cami. I'm Mindy Hurley. I have been with the city for 14 going on 15. Oh, I'm sorry, 15 going on 16 years. And I am one of the liaisons to this committee. We've got Cami and Matt also, which they'll introduce themselves in a second. But so it's thank you all for being willing to serve in a volunteer capacity on this with us. And we look forward to the great work that we're going to continue to do from last year.
Thank you. Matt, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Matt Steer. I'm the Development Services Administrator. And I've been with the city for 17 years. And I started when I was 13. So I serve as a resource to the board for planning, land use, comprehensive plan, and development-related questions.
And he's a great bowler.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And I'm Cami McGee. I am your board secretary. I'm sorry, I was about to say what you were, Matt. I'm the community development administrative manager. And I was born and raised in Coppell, so I've been around Coppell for, I don't want to say my age, but 35 plus years. And I've been with the city of Coppell I just wrapped up my 12th year, going on my 13th year.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Appreciate everyone taking the time to introduce yourselves. Item number 5 on the agenda is the election of officers. So every year we elect a chair and a vice chair.
Hey, so Bart, I was going to move that you continue to be chair of it, and I was going to ask if I can take Leslie's spot as vice chair.
Well, appreciate the nomination. Peggy, I'm happy to nominate you as vice chair. I guess we would need seconds from everyone, and also if anyone else wants to be voted on as being chair or vice chair, we would need motions for that as well.
I'd like to second that motion for her to continue in a vice chair capacity.
She's a new vice chair, but understood.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll second. Well, I can't second Bart.
You already made the motion.
I made the motion for Bart. Somebody else has to second. Russell.
I'll second. So for Bart.
Are there any other nominations for chair or vice chair? Okay, so the nominations have been made for me to continue serving as chair in 2021 and for Peggy to serve as our vice chair. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item number 6, future IQ update by Mindy Hurley.
So before we jump into that, I did want to let the rest of the committee know that we did do an orientation on Monday for the new members. So they have been brought up to speed a little on what we've been doing this last year and then what kind of where we're going. And so with that, I'll give a little bit of background about Future IQ just so they hear it again, but they have already been updated a little bit about Future IQ so they know what we're talking about. So Future IQ is the group, well, I should say, we've been doing a lot of work on this committee on different types of senior housing options. And it was recommended that maybe we look at hiring an outside consultant in order to do advanced scenario planning to help us kind of move to the next step on senior housing and help prepare us for the other types of future housing that are listed in our pillar and goals. And so we brought that to the committee. Future IQ is the group that prepared the Vision 2040 plan. So if you were involved with that at all, you've had some exposure to them. And so, and they're I guess the best way to describe them, they are futurists. So They were working on, they did the 2040 plan. And so it was recommended that we continue with them because they know our community. They're familiar with the desires and I guess the areas to avoid in the community. So there were a lot of advantages to moving forward with Future IQ. So this committee made a recommendation, I believe at the November board meeting, to take a recommendation to City Council in order to enter into a contract to move forward with Future IQ for the advanced scenario planning. At the same time, our other new board, Smart City Board, was doing the same thing. We were going to run concurrently with them, working with Future IQ in order to do advanced scenario planning. Obviously, for them, it would be related to Smart City, and for Foard, it would be related to housing. We discussed it. This board made a recommendation. The Smart City Board, I believe the majority is in favor of moving forward, but they did decide to pause. So they had a few other things they wanted to accomplish before they entered into this contract with Future IQ. Now, we had talked as a committee that we wanted to make sure that we had Census 2020 data in order to make sure we had the correct representative sample of the different demographics in Coppell. So I think we had, as a whole, kind of decided that we would not want to engage with them until April or later, because the Census 2020 data, we will receive that in April. So I think we had already made our decision that that's what we would do. The Smart City Board at their January meeting has decided to pause indefinitely with Future IQ. So I think they still have the intention to move forward, but they did not want to be so specific to say that they would move forward in April. And so while we talked to David Burrell, I'm never sure if I'm saying his last name correctly, with Future IQ about the advantages of doing this concurrently with the Smart City. He said there would be some advantages to doing it because obviously they could use, while they were in town, they could do focus groups, they could capture some of the same, some questions Smart City Board wanted to know in our focus groups and vice versa. So there was some advantages to trying to do them parallel, but that it wasn't detrimental if they weren't done at the same time. So really my main update tonight is that Smart City may be ready to move forward in April, but they may not be ready. And I don't have an answer on that for you. So really our question is, we knew we were going to probably pause until at least April to engage with them so that we could get that census data. The next question is, would y'all want to move forward independently from the Smart City, or would y'all want to wait until the Smart City is ready? So that's really kind of before y'all tonight to discuss on, and maybe we can wait. I mean, I guess that decision does not have to be made tonight since we know we're waiting until April anyway, but just something for this group to be thinking about. Would you want to move forward without them if they were not ready in April, or would you want to wait until they're ready so that we could do both of them concurrently? So that's where we are, but I'll let y'all ask any questions or discuss anything you want to.
So Mindy, how would the pricing change? I mean, we were going to partner with Smart Cities because there's synergies. If they're doing a bigger project, then, there's obviously some savings there for the city.
Well, so the interesting thing will be, part of what Smart City was concerned about moving forward right now is that they really wanted their focus groups to be in person. We talked to David Burrell about that. I'm sorry, I know I'm saying his name wrong, but we talked to him about what has the effectiveness of focus groups in the work he's been doing this past year. What is the effectiveness when he's holding those virtually versus in person? He said they've been extremely successful, that he really didn't have concern about doing the focus groups virtually versus in person. And a lot of this is up in the air because we don't really know when we will start doing things in person anymore. So he doesn't have any concerns about doing them virtually if we wanted to move forward in April. But that was a concern for Smart City. That was just one of their concerns. So if we do it separate, it shouldn't, and we remain virtual, it shouldn't increase the cost any, unless we change the scope somehow of the, what we ask him to do between now and whenever we're ready to move forward. If we want them to come hold focus groups in person, that's obviously going to change the price. And that's when that probably really does make sense for us to wait and do it concurrently so that they could make one trip. We're paying travel and lodging one time versus, we do it and then 6 months later we have to pay that all over again. So, but it doesn't have to be that way. So that would just be, it shouldn't change the cost of the proposal we have on the table today unless we change the scope, unless we switch to wanting to do them in person.
So is the indefinite pause on future IQ from Smart City only because of the focus groups not being in person? Or is there
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or is there another reason?
There were some other discussions, and so I think they decided they have created kind of a strategic plan for their entire pillar where we just tackled Smart City. Senior housing initially. They kind of came up with their plan for the entire pillar up front. So they had several different things that they have on their strategic plan, and I'm using the word strategic plan, formal strategic plan, just kind of their plan for moving forward. And so I think they just decided they wanted to accomplish or dig some of those other items a little first before they move forward, just to kind of give them a better idea and grasp on what they're doing. Their topic is much broader than ours. And I think there's just a few things they wanted to explore a little further before moving forward.
I guess one of the questions that I would have would be, what are the risks to our desires about presenting something in the future? Obviously, we have to wait through April. There is data or content that it was my understanding we're looking to have that are parallel efforts. So the question that I would have is that it sounds like we're being fiscally responsible by not incurring additional costs for this subset of information that we're seeking. If that's the case, I'm not seeing harm unless it compromises an overall strategic objective.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Yeah, I did a lot of usability testing and user experience for 20-something years, and so long as you can see the face and the emotion of the people in the focus group, which I think our Zooms and stuff are pretty good about that, I don't think you're losing that much. It's when people hide themselves on the camera that you're maybe missing things, and if they know they're there for a focus group, I don't think that's a real problem. So I don't see any reason to wait myself.
I tend to agree with Russell too, and Yvonne, because I don't think we lose anything by moving ahead. And I really, given and of course things could change, but given the COVID vaccine and how fast that's not going, then I don't think that April is going to be a face-to-face. I don't think they're looking at face-to-face probably until next November, December, and that's probably an iffy date. So I would say that we need to plug on and be cost conscious and like I said, and like Yvonne said, be sympathetic towards anything that they may need, even if they could say that they want this data and they're willing to take it from a focus group that's on Zoom or something. We certainly would not, turn them down, but I don't think that we can wait for them.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Sheila, go ahead.
Yeah, from a focus group perspective, and if our subset is targeting seniors, And I'm just thinking of my mom right now, nobody in the community, she lives in Illinois. They might not be that comfortable using technology. And so from a focus group perspective, maybe there's a strategy where they would suggest we partner with area churches where some still might attend in person, and we could use maybe some space there to socially distance and conduct some in-person focus groups with seniors if we wanted to mix up our focus groups in a way that targets our subset. I'm just trying to think about their ability to Zoom, and I'm still taking my mom through it, so this is not about any of my neighbors, but I just wanted to try to channel that senior mindset.
No, that's absolutely, that's one of the things we did talk about is we need to make sure when we're just trying to get information through technology, surveys that are online, or that there may be some segments of the population that are not comfortable doing that. So that's a very, very valid point. And so I think some of the things we can do, since we know we're probably going to delay until April anyway, just for the census data, I think we can continue those conversations with Future IQ about what, assuming we don't have in-person focus groups starting in April or May or whatever whatever timeframe, what is the game plan for capturing some of those focus group, those segments of the population that we could not capture easily through technology? I think there will be some that will be easy, but some that aren't. And so I think those are good conversations to have. It gives us time to also think about these next few months on some of the things we're working on, if there are any revisions we want to make to our scope of work with them. And so I just need to really, the next step is I need to contact Future IQ and let them know that while we agree that we should wait till April until we get the census data to begin, we're not certain that we would wait for Smart City to go concurrently. So just kind of running past kind of the game plan, and if it changes anything for them. I mean, we've already had that conversation, but just kind of firmed that up. And then that way we can get the finalized proposal back in front of everybody and then move forward after our April meeting. So.
Hey, Mindy, the question I have is, I agree with everybody. It's a great conversation. But the question I have is, Focus IQ is also in a tough spot if they are not able to do this kind of thing. I don't know how they are, putting bread and butter on the table, how they are making money. So do they have any alternatives? I'm sure they are supporting other cities and they have same kind of challenges everywhere. So what is the options they have? Question number one. And question number two is, let's say we decide to go forward in April based on the census coming out, and Smart City is not ready at the time. What is the cost differential for the city of Coppell just because we did not consolidate our purchases with Smart City? What is the difference?
I will certainly ask that question, but like I said earlier, I don't think it should be a different cost. Our proposals were submitted separately, so it wasn't a joint proposal initially. So it shouldn't change our cost unless we change the scope or we do ask them to do in-person focus groups. So, but I'll pose that question just in case it does change the cost in any way, but it should not.
The other thing that I'd like to bring up for everybody to know is that the Senior Center has been doing Zoom everything, Zoom seminars, Zoom gaming. They do everything on Zoom, and there are quite a bit of people who are on those that are participating and have been able to participate just fine. And I think that we probably, Mindy, if we could reach out to the head of the Senior Center and maybe get like a percentage of people that have told her that they're not comfortable on Zoom and they're just taking a hiatus totally from the Senior Center versus how many people do reach out to them and stuff, so we kind of know, out of the 5,000 people or 3,000 people they have as members, what's their percentage of people that are comfortable and are attending their normal activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we did talk about in the past is, especially if we do move forward with virtual focus groups for the seniors, if we could get the senior center to partner with us to help in that, working with those seniors, whether it's providing training to get on, or if it's providing computers that they can go to during the focus groups, and then somebody's there to support them, whatever that is. So we'll ask the senior center that question if they're able to partner with us if we do have to move forward with a virtual focus group for the seniors. So
you should probably also keep in mind that, remember, this is born out of the Vision 2040 plan. So we're not just talking about people that are seniors now, but our planning and efforts are geared towards those who are going to be seniors in 20 years.
That was a big point that came up during our orientation too, was remember that we talked about how the needs of different ages are so vary, they vary considerably. And then when we're talking about, it's the 30-year-olds, or I guess I should say 40-year-olds that we should be talking to today that will be senior, qualify as seniors in 2040. So absolutely.
I would extend that thought too to maybe a demographic breakdown from the senior center versus what we get from the census, because the demographics of today probably will change in the future, and we want to incorporate that as well.
Sure. And they're transforming now. We just went through a McKinsey study and some amazing research that indicates the huge transformation underway from a socioeconomic perspective because of COVID. And depending upon so for example, we feed American Airlines here. For the people that lost their jobs, their socioeconomic condition changed. So the reasons they would exit the community are changing and evolving as a consequence of our current environment with the pandemic. So as the aging has occurred and the needs-based services, because the services come into play about delivery of your products to your home, accessibility. I mean, there are so many variables in there that I believe we can conduct focus groups with the amazing teams that we work with, the 2040, the allies, and we have a rich resource there that will cover all the demographics.
Hi, Maria. I see you with your hand raised.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I want to welcome the new members. Thank you for being part of our committee or board. And I want to wish everyone 2021 blessings. My multi-generational family, I have a 90-year-old mother who's a senior. And then my husband and I are the seniors, but she says we're not real seniors because we're 30 years younger than her. And then we have a 26, 25, and a 18-month-old baby. We all were infected with COVID. So my life perspective has changed. Nobody's going to put me in a retirement home. We were able to stay home. We were able to get the immune therapy for the seniors. We were able to manage the whole crisis in our home. So I think this post-COVID there were a lot of seniors that died in these senior living, massive facilities. I think this is change. And I know Russell, he's very optimistic and he says, very soon we will be all doing the same thing. Yes, we will be doing the same thing. But for those of us that were affected directly, either because somebody close to us died or we went through it, our retirement plans have changed. So I just want to say that the focus groups are key. And not only the seniors, the younger seniors that are here now, because, me and Daniel, we're thinking of being in the job market 10 years more. But, the definition of senior in Coppell is very, very broad. You have somebody that's 50 and somebody that's 100. So I think it's those seniors and then the future seniors as well. But I think it's very important to include ethnicity and races because maybe us Hispanics and the way we get older is closer to the people from India than to the people that are white, so I think it's got to be that diversity of ages, but also ethnicity and race, because the culture plays a huge step in this. And I don't know if I've shared this before, but my sister, who arrived here when she was 15 years old, and she's a true American, she told me she was going to put my mother in a facility, and she took me there, and I said, not on my watch. I mean, for the last 200 years, I come from Venezuela, we've been taking care of our elderly, and she's going to live with me. So I've seen it in my life. The more American we get, the more, and so I would like that diversity to not only be of age, but of color of skin, of races, of cultures. And I just want to, share that with the new members, because the old members know me. I've said this 1,000 times. I'm sorry to bore you.
I echo that, and I am also part of that sandwich generation. We have multiple generations in our house. Yes, agreed.
And that's exactly what I was targeting when I said demographic study. It was beyond age, absolutely, ethnicities, races, everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely the plan. So we will do that. We'll make sure we do that.
I had a question for you. Mindy, can you put the agenda in the chat? Unfortunately, I didn't receive it for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Because that way I know we're in the 6, but I don't know what 7 is.
Sure. Is it okay if I email it to you? I'm not exactly sure how to put it in the chat.
Well, you just copy and paste, but yeah, can you email it again? Because I didn't receive it.
Yes, if you'll.
I'm so glad you're well from COVID too. Blessings to you. I hope everybody turns just fine.
Well, and I'm a resource. Whoever wants to know anything about COVID or anything, just reach out.
Thank you.
As long as we're talking about COVID, just so everybody knows, everybody at St. Joseph got their first and second shots. My mother received her second shot, I think last week, and everybody's fine. They made them all go through a COVID test today. Every resident and every employee there had to go back and do a COVID test, even though they've all received this shot number 2. When they first went through the mandatory COVID testing, right before they had shot number 1, they did have several people that had it that didn't know they had it. But they've been very good. They deliver the meals to everybody's house, everybody's apartment. They don't have people walking in the halls very much. Nobody is allowed to leave other than to go to the doctor. So they have been able to keep it down, and nobody has gotten sick enough to go to the hospital or anything. Everybody has just done their 14 days at the facility and gotten over it. And now everybody's been vaccinated at that facility.
That's awesome.
Is there any other comments y'all want to add to this piece? I've got some questions to go back and talk to Future IQ about, and then also the Senior Center. Is there anything else before we move on?
No.
Okay.
I had to figure out where the mute button was. Agenda item number 7 is the senior housing matrix evaluation. And that was attached to the end of the agenda?
Yes. And I don't know if you saw it, Maria, but I just put the link to the packet in there. Okay. So if y'all remember, y'all wanted to start this at this Foard task force meeting to start evaluating the matrix that y'all put, or that Peggy put together and that you all contributed to start basically evaluating to see which options you want to cross off the list that you don't think are viable in Coppell, so that you don't spend any more time on those. And so I'm not sure exactly how y'all want to, if you just want to go line by line and talk about those and then come to a consensus as a group on what you want to mark off. that would work. I don't know. It was attached to the agenda. It's also in the SharePoint site for any of the new members if you don't have a copy of it. So are y'all comfortable with moving forward that way?
I think that's a pretty direct way of approaching it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then Bart, I'll turn it over to you to kind of go.
All right. It's too small on my screen here. Okay, so the first option on the matrix is aging in place. I guess I can do the brief description just to catch everyone up. Senior owns their home and stays there, making modifications for elderly amenities like bathroom rails, opening up walls for open concepts, building ramps on steps, etc. Danielle and Russell had worked on this one.
I don't think that this one, I think this one is basically up to individuals. I know that my husband and I have decided to stay in our home. I recently retired. He was already retired. And so we're going to just stay here, make modifications that we need to, and stay here.
Yeah, but I think from the city's role in that, the city can play a role in providing tax breaks or things like that. So I think aging in place is still something that we have to consider as we go through doing what we're doing. And I think maybe that's the better way to look at everything is, do we feel like the city has a role in any of these kinds of options? Because those options could still develop over time and have nothing to do with us. So
they absolutely do in the sustainability plan for sure, and the blueprint commitments being made, so on and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we can research it and find other cities doing resource assessments and resource outsourcing for people to stay in place, that's definitely a plus.
I have a question because I've seen incentives, for example, for sustainability. Like if you put solar panels on, and we're trying to reduce, the pressure on the grid or whatever. Like Plano has given incentives and other. Is there any city that has given incentives for ADA compliancy for seniors? It's a question. I don't know because yes, this is totally up to the private owner, but are there any cities that are giving incentives for homes that are, I don't know, senior friendly or something like that? It's a question. I don't know.
Sure. So Marcy Diamond, who used to work for this city, she put together a study. So the answer is yes, there are cities. And I'll have to go back and look to see if I can find her the work she did on researching it to give you examples of what cities are currently. I will tell you that we took this proposal to council quite several years ago. And at that time, council wasn't interested in incentivizing this, but
young.
Well, and we didn't have the 2040 plan yet.
But now we have the 2040. Maybe we should, one of the agenda items I proposed, Bart, maybe for next meeting is looking at that study and seeing if, yes, this is definitely a feasible option. And maybe the city could have this role, just suggesting as other cities.
Sure. Yeah, we
That's
can
smart.
That she did a great amount of research on it. I'm sure it's even changed since that time. So I can try to update that some between now and the next meeting, and then we can bring that back so at least you have that information. And like I said, at the time, City Council wasn't necessarily interested in it. But I think that, again, we didn't have 2040 at that time, so things have changed. So this council might be interested in this. So,
hi, and this is Yvonne. And from what my knowledge is, if you go out to the utility site on our city's site, they are not just taking a passive role there. They are actually engaged, and they talk very much about the various grants and the funding available for your sustainability master strategic plan. I can tell you from experience that there are grants that we could write for. And one of the recommendations that could tangibly come out from the team would be to initiate a grant that handles the ADA provisions or grant funding that would fund the initiative as part of an aging in strategic vision. So I know that it's possible, and I have research that could support that I could produce as a consequence to help with that.
So it sounds like there's a good appetite to keep this on the table and to hear more from Mindy next time with that report on city incentives. So.
Well, and I think Yvonne can also, you can also share with us your research, because grants are very much needed, and that could also help the owner. You know, if there's grants that can help them adequate their housing, then it's coming with funding. So I think I would propose, Yvonne, if you want to, maybe not next meeting, but the other one, if you could do a presentation of what your research,
sure,
that would be great.
Sure, and I can just quick reference, SECO grant would be one of them, the SECO grant, which helps with the utility side, but there are also huge volumes of CDC grants right now. And believe it or not, FEMA grants that came as a consequence of COVID. So truth be told, if we're worth our salt because our world changed so dramatically, that's really why we have such an amazing compilation of people invested in the community, because we can produce that kind of information.
Hey, Mindy, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I like the direction you guys are taking. What is the current homestead for these 65 or seniors that we are talking about? Homestead exemption.
I don't know the exact amount. I can.
It was on our, let's see, it was on our presentation. We did have the amount of homesteads that are 65 plus with the county.
I think you're looking at the exemption dollar amount.
Yeah, the dollar amount. And I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. And so I can get that and bring that back.
We also have a map of all the homes that are exempted because of being seniors, Subu, that you could check. It's in our.
No. Where I'm going is, it's not the number of homes. It's if you talk about grants for solar or being environmentally friendly, that is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, which is hard dollar savings for any homeowner, especially if they are eligible and if they are seniors, is to provide homestead exemptions. And I think there's an opportunity there, because I believe our close neighbors are at 25% or something like that. So that is something that we should look at, because one person may say, I want to go solar, the other one may not. So, but the homestead will apply to anybody as long as you are at that age. So that is something I would highly recommend.
And we do have the homestead exemption for 65 and older. I just don't know what the amount is. So I'll have to get that and get it back to you. Yeah.
I think he's talking about also extending that to where it could be a homestead exemption for, 55 to 65 of X amount versus 65 up. Or you're talking about a tiered homestead exemption? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm not talking about that, Peggy. I'm just talking about the eligible seniors in our population that we are talking about in this Foard group, because that is all I'm talking about.
Okay. We do have those numbers, yeah.
Well, and we also have another number, which is the utility, the water, that is Coppell. It gives you a discount when you're a senior. So we also have that number. I don't know in what document or what map or plan, but it's there. I think Mindy could help us find it for you.
Yeah, I'll get that for you also.
Yeah. It sounds like we're good with moving forward with aging in place. The next item on the grid is the naturally occurring retirement community. This is akin to aging in place, where neighborhoods or locations that just happen to have a significant number of older people is create a network of shared support services. I will say the next one on the list is the village model. So if we're talking about the NORC and whether to discuss that further, I think we have to keep in mind that the next thing on the list is the village model. Did anyone think that the NORC by itself needed additional discussion or work by the group?
No, I think we should take it off just because that one's really just neighbor helping neighbor in an unorganized kind of fashion. And I think you're right. Villages will supplant that in what we were going to try to achieve.
Okay. Anyone disagree?
Well, I don't know why take it off. Why would you take it off?
More that, do we think that we, going forward, have a need specifically for the NORC to, continue developing ideas and models and potentially bring that to council? Is this something where we think the city has a role to play, as opposed to, say, the village concept?
Well, I mean, I think this one is more physical. The village is almost like a virtual kind of village. And so when we looked at the map of where the seniors were living, we found some clusters, like a cul-de-sac where there were like a whole bunch of little dots.
Right.
So I think, and so what would that mean? If it's a senior,
it would just mean that the clusters would be serviced by the village.
Well, no, but I mean, it could let's say that they wanted to do a pedestrian, maybe a plate where the cars would not circulate so that it's pedestrian or more of a boulevard. I don't know. I'm just thinking, what is the benefit of eliminating it? I mean, I think it doesn't harm to have that as an option.
Well, the NORC actually is a village. It's just a smaller village, because what happens is that a neighborhood of I live in Pecan Hollow. We've got 202 homes, and we would decide that we need to support seniors that live here, and so then we would do ride share with your neighbor if needed. Do help your neighbor by mowing his yard because he needs it. And he can't keep up anymore or something like that. But the village would do the same thing, but for everybody across it. So that's why we're saying that we really don't need both, because the village would cover the whole city of Coppell, and it would cover whatever the NORC was going to cover.
Well, I mean, I studied that one, and I remember it was sharing resources. For example, if you have a swimming pool, because you had children that were small, but now that swimming pool could serve, if you have a whole bunch of seniors, you could offer that swimming pool for the seniors to do water aquatics or whatever. So it's a physical village where you have a sector of the city that is friendly towards seniors. This is radically different from the village, which is more of internet platform kind of thing, from what I understood.
No.
So that's why I propose to not exclude it, because,
the village is exactly what you're saying. In other words, the village concept is having, a swimming pool where people come there and they all swim together and things like that. The village concept is exactly what you're saying. The only difference is that the NORC is a specific neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And the village covers all the neighborhoods, can cover all the neighborhoods, and can even cover the places like St. Joseph. You can be a part of the village if you live in St. Joseph, if you're in an independent living, and still be that. So it's much the same, Maria. There's not a lot of difference at all.
So when I read the description on the spreadsheet, it says the village, essentially, there would be some membership dues that need to be paid and stuff like that. Whereas I don't see anything like that with the NORC.
There can be in both scenarios. There can be. The NORC, like for example, in a NORC, you could have that. Yes, everybody's going to that one swimming pool and doing aerobics, and that person's charging $5 a piece because they have to pay somebody to maintain their pool. So the NORC could have fees associated with it, just like the village. And some of the villages do have fees, and some of the villages are free.
So village would be more of a managed, whereas the NORC is more of a, let us say, like-minded people doing it.
Right.
Yeah, the villages to some extent can be either professionally managed or managed by volunteers or managed part-time, was my understanding. I interrupted you, Russell. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was, kind of to get to Maria's point, I think if the city was going to play a part in the naturally occurring retirement communities, it would be in taking some of these neighborhoods that are already significantly elderly in population and then zoning them to be specific to 55 or 65 and older. Other than that, I'm not sure where the city comes into play on that.
But it could come to play because if there's like a public transit solution, then there would be a bus stop there because they are a population that needs public transportation. And I think it's important if it's a zoning change, that affects the property value and the type of neighbors you have. I mean, I tell you, I'm in a cul-de-sac, and I'm really tired of picking up Sonic, styrofoam or this or that, because since it's a cul-de-sac, there's a whole bunch of youngsters that kind of hang out there, and I think there's even drugs or something going on because I see from one side to another changes of lights or something. I mean, that's not compatible. I mean, a place where the teenagers are hanging out with seniors. So there could be a zoning change. There could be a limited access to that area because seniors are walking in the street. I mean, I have a lot of people from India that they walk as families. Sometimes they go beyond the sidewalk, they're walking on the street. So I do not agree in eliminating that option. I just want to state, I prefer to leave it.
Does anyone else have input on the NORC?
Maybe as we get along and as we look at the NORC, it's going to basically kind of fold in to the village anyway. So
it could, absolutely. Or we could find that something else comes up about it that's unique and that we like. So
yeah.
Right. The next item is the village model. I keep wanting to say concept, but our speaker told us it's a model, not a concept. I mean, I'm fairly interested in it, and I know several of you are as well. Does anyone have any comments or issues with the village?
I think the village, the city definitely plays a big role in the village, in the construction of it, how it's run, everything like that. So I think it's definitely stays on the list, and because the city would play a big role in that.
Okay. Anyone else? This is probably as close to a gimme as we're going to get. Okay. Next item is the granny pod, which you may remember, a tiny house, usually around 500 square feet, built on a large lot behind or on the side of a large house close to an elderly parent. And as I recall, one of the bigger issues with this was in Coppell, we just don't have a lot of large lots.
We don't have a lot of large lots, and on any of the grounds that anybody's tried to build a granny pod, there have been limitations. The city of Coppell does not allow 2 kitchens, for example, on the same property. So I say we eliminate granny pods. There's no sense in.
Well, why can't the zoning change?
Well, the zoning could change And then you could allow people to put in granny pods. But when we took a look at the map that Matt Steers gave us, there's very little land, or there's very little lots today.
Well, the granny pod is as big as a shed, and a shed is actually it's permitted. I think it's 12 by
as someone
10.
who was on the Board of Adjustment, mini sheds are not permitted.
That's
I have
correct.
to say.
No sheds. You can. I think it's 12 by 10 that you can do with no permit.
Yeah, but you
Right,
can't live in there, and there are restrictions about air conditioning it and stuff. And
Well, our board is thinking out of the box and proposing things that, I mean, because the zoning doesn't permit it now, it doesn't mean it cannot be permitted. I mean, and the lots, I mean, I've seen houses, especially like in front of the duck pond, they have huge properties. It's you know, again, I don't see the point in eliminating it. I just
So here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
The big issue that tends to come out of these granny pods, and then I know I sent Peggy at least a article I found on it. In the Pacific Northwest, they're known as laneway houses. Essentially, I don't have my house pulled up on Google Maps, but if I just took most of my backyard and plopped a house down in the back of it, in theory that would fit. And I could say, oh, it's for my elderly parent or whatever. What then gets cities very concerned, though, is that when I sell it, you know, if they don't have a very tight restriction on the use and there's another kitchen in there, in theory that could be sold or rented out as another property. And you're talking about very quickly potentially increasing densification, which specifically in the 2040 plan, there was a call out that said people in Coppell don't want densification. They want to maintain the unique single family nature of the community. So to me, even if it's something we could spend a lot of time on, absolutely, but we would have an extremely difficult time getting council to agree to that as a long-term solution, because they would look down the road at it as a long-term solution and see the potential for abuse and densification.
yeah, I
say
think
abuse,
we knock
but-
it out because
Hey,
there's no sense in spending time on it.
Hey guys, Peggy and Bart, are we putting the cart before the horse?
What do you mean?
So we are talking about options for these neighborhoods and all that. Do we know what the customer wants? Have we spoken to them?
Yes. So
we are deciding for them without even understanding their requirements. And I totally agree with somebody who's saying that zone change is possible. You know, if we are going back with the current state, then we are not going to be making any kind of progress or change. So the current state rules and laws exist in Coppell for a reason, but they want to move forward for a senior friendly living situation, which is a different kind of thing. If we keep the same rules, then we cannot, it's like trying a square hole in a round peg and vice versa.
This list was completely examined. We all split it up. We did extensive work on research of each one of these. And I think that's what's missing here for maybe the new folks, because Matt Steers, who's on the call, did probably about 20 maps of every way to look at all of this and everything. And so like when it came to granny pods, he actually showed us on the map the only places where there was enough land and where the deed restrictions weren't already in place in the deeds for those houses. So there was no way, you can't turn over a deed on the house. You know, and so when we looked at that, and that's one of the reasons why I said I don't feel like it's worthy of our time, because then also people have applied for granny pods. There are several of them in the city, but like I said, they are not allowed to have a kitchen.
I have to agree with Subu. Why are we deciding what goes and what doesn't go if we don't even have the results of the focus groups? I mean, this is a huge responsibility. I mean, deciding what goes and doesn't go amongst, how many are we? 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3, 12 people, or I mean, I don't know how much of the community. I think it's putting the carts before the horses. I agree with Subu. I don't think we have the data or the information of who we're serving until we have the focus group. I would not eliminate. I think this is Bart. I don't know what, I can just see in the agenda, we were going to discuss the matrix, but I would propose deferring the decision of what we're going to push forward or back until we have data from the focus groups. I would just use this point of information for the new members to share what we've done in research, but I wouldn't start eliminating things at this point, because I think part of the consulting work that we're going to get back is these focus groups and what they're saying. That's my proposal. I don't think we're at a place where we can decide what we keep or what we don't. I would wait for the data of the focus groups, and maybe even include, some kind of, I don't know, graphic, way of getting feedback from people. That's what I propose.
Maria, even if they want granny pods and you have them saying that in theory they want granny pods, logistically, Matt has showed us on maps that we can't gain the number of granny pods. I could want to have a granny pod on my property. I don't have enough property to even have that.
I'd like to say that as urban planners, we have a huge responsibility because we're affecting the rights of the owners. So we have to be really careful when we do restrictions. So if we have the opportunity to revise, to check what's going on and propose new things, we should be able to do that, because it's about being responsible with the owners, and we have to ask them, what do they think about it? So I don't know what we have to, as an urban planner, I don't like to be a desk planner, planning from my desk. I have to talk to the people and check with them, because they are the owners. Is the right? It's like we have to deal with that. It's like a kind of a negotiation between the city and the owners, because the city is administrating the property of the owners. So their opinion might be important.
So I guess I'm trying to understand. It seems like there's some conflicting ideas on what this process started out to be. And from Maria and everybody's point of view of keep it, I don't think what we're saying is eliminate it as an option for the plans or whatever. I thought we were trying to go through this list to focus on what we wanted to focus on right now to possibly push forward kind of a short term, not the longer term, but the short term, mid-term kind of things that we've already kind of learned over the last year that we could suggest that we feel comfortable with, and really deep dive into those things we feel comfortable with our resources on the board. Not eliminate that we can never go back to granny pods, or that Future IQ can't add questions to the survey. I thought that was about us focusing our own time and energy and how we were going to subdivide our own labor. But maybe I'm misconstruing.
No, I think that's a good way of looking at it, Russell.
Yeah, and
that's what we were doing.
I apologize because you all requested this exercise this month. That's why it's on the agenda. And
what have we done to ourselves?
So
I think
maybe Russell has phrased it better. It's
short, mid, and long.
It's really kind of prioritizing what y'all want to spend your time on right now. What seems the best options or just where you want to focus your studies right now, because there's a lot of options on here. And so it would take much longer to do extensive studies on each of these. So that's probably, Russell's probably phrased it much better. It's not eliminating it. It's just kind of prioritizing where you want to focus your energy right now.
Yeah, I thought kind of in December that we'd kind of agreed that we would like to try to put something forward kind of as, and I, we can go through the whole list, but I think we're all gonna, the folks who've been here the last year are gonna come back. I would hope we have some sort of agreement that villages is a cool concept, and it's a short term, mid-term thing that we can start bringing to that we can really research and flesh out and take to the board. Whereas I think of Future IQ, because half of Future IQ has nothing to do with the seniors, right? We've got to get back and focus on the whole 2040 for residential living for the whole community and all demographics. And part of what they're going to be doing is that. And, we can focus on these other things, but it's at some point, I thought we were working toward that. But
your exact statement in December was take the metrics and eliminate the options that aren't feasible in Coppell. Those were your exact.
Okay, well then.
But I like the way Russell phrased it.
I agree with Russell. I think that the way that Russell has refocused it is good. It's a good way to approach this.
So it sounds like the motion is to prioritize the quick hits with an objective in mind, which the objective is to have something after the census and after the focus group, is what I heard.
I thought we were going to kind of have two parts, that there would be let's say this first quarter before something that we all felt comfortable going to the board with, and then there would be the big study, and we would try to lay out the entire next 15 years, 20-year plan. Because when we went through all the different options and we did all the research, the villages really started getting everybody's attention. And what's unique about Coppell versus a lot of the villages is how, and Peggy has phrased this a lot better than I can, but really how we are situated to make this a government/community synergistic village, as opposed in a community of, a city-run kind of village, and there's very few of those. Most of the villages are nonprofits that organically create from a NORC, and then they organize and they become, bigger. But with our senior citizens center, with the citizens patrol, with, just all of the things we've got going on in the city to involve our citizens, the synergy's there now to go ahead and start putting that thing in place. But a lot of things have to go around that.
Okay.
And then I think all these other options, granny pods and everything else, we don't have enough information.
Okay.
So
I hear you. That makes sense to me. As you speak through it a little deeper, what it sounds like is you see that a proposal, there's been a lot of research at hand. You've confirmed through the strategic plan that it's needed. You've confirmed the dynamics of introducing it to the board, and you feel comfortable based upon your last year of work that you could have something before April, which is a nice goal to have, right? Knowing that you have some short-term solutions that you're looking to propose.
Right.
We kind of owe it. We owe it to the city council. Go ahead, Russell.
I hear you.
We've been working for a year, and they don't know what we're doing.
That makes sense to me. It totally makes sense to me, because it sounds like there's a list of short-term, quick hits based upon the research at that point in time. And as we come in, the focus groups, the other pieces, that's just another layer that it sounds like could feed your content, your design, your implementation but you want to get it off the ground is what I'm hearing.
Right. And I think this process we're going through on the matrix is really what are the quick hits and what are not.
Okay, perfect. I think that's a wonderful strategy. Yeah. It makes total sense to me.
So another thing, if I look through the list a little, and there are some things in there that are actually more of a deliberate plan forward in terms of how you manage new communities when they come up, or what kind of zoning requirements will come in when you plan on a new community coming in and things like that. Whereas there are some concepts already in there which you can hitch on and pilot right away because you can actually identify groups that the city can work with and create maybe a little village to see how it works. And in the short run, you can use that as a pilot to see how it plans, how it boards for the future going forward, if that is even a good concept, because you can always pilot something like the village sooner as opposed to building a completely new mixed community housing or a mixed community development, which is much more of an elaborate planning exercise.
Correct.
Exactly. So I think we've identified villages as a potential short-term concept that we'd like to, suggest is the right term, but,
And I think, as we mentioned on aging in place, understanding whether or not we could go forward with an incentive to allow people to renovate and get a rebate or whatever, however that works. I don't know how that would work, but that's another short term. And then these other ones are just too complex for us to dive into at that time. Yeah.
I guess I would ask, as opposed to going through everything on the list one by one, does anyone see any other item on the list that you think has a similar short-term potential that we should be exploring in the near term and getting a potential report or suggestion out to council?
When I think of co-housing, to me that's maybe helping find roommates and people in the community moving in together and things like that. Mm-hmm. Or was that the one where they're sharing like common areas?
I think that would be a cooperative.
Oh, that's the cooperative. No, the co-housing is the one where they're sharing actual like kitchens or living areas or yards or things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
They do kind of blend together for me.
Yeah, they do kind of. Yeah, co-housing versus group homes.
Okay, so group homes and had sharing. Okay, so to me, group homes is a completely different thing than sharing, and I think we kind of blended them together, and because group homes has a connotation of being kind of a mini assisted living facility, and it's got state licensing issues possibly, and whereas sharing is more finding the roommates and all that. So sharing to me is something that could work under the villages if we incorporated allowing that kind of matchmaking and things like that.
And that's happening right now. There's several in Coppell
that are already like doing all that. Then that's great.
Co-housing. Yeah. I have my mother has a friend that lives with 4 other seniors and a nurse or something in Coppell.
Okay.
So I don't know if they got a special permit, and that's a question for Mindy, for Matt, or for the city. Is there a special permit to be able to do that, or you just do it?
I guess at one point, is it considered a group home? Like, what's the threshold where you would need a permit?
Right.
That would have to be revised. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the state handles those permits.
And I thought, Matt, that don't we have like a 3 different family kind of limit? Like you can't have 4 different families living in the same members from 4 different family groups living in the same.
There is a threshold. I think I put that definition on the SharePoint site, but I can't remember it offhand.
Yeah, but only if somebody like narked on you could anybody know that you've got 4 different family groups living, members of different families living together. So it really comes down on the state licensing issue. It comes down to whether or not the people can really take care of themselves and how much care they really need. Because I think if that nurse is providing more than just the basics of assisted living, then that might cause some issues if somebody found out about it, or if some incident happened and they would be maybe labeled as an unlicensed group home from the research that we did. And so, but I'm just kind of going back to the sharing's the only other one that I look at the list that's kind of low hanging fruit to me, where we could roll that concept of helping match make, a widow, 2 widows possibly sharing a home and moving in together or something like that, and make that part of the village, a service under the village or something.
The village actually did have that as one of the services, Russell. Remember, it's called Silver, I want to say Silver Screen, but it's not Silver Screen, it's Silver something, and there is an actual there's an actual entity that does that the village takes advantage of, so that they do offer that service.
Okay.
Did anyone else see any list items that they thought would be good short-term concepts to tackle?
I'm in agreement for the ones that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I know that we are waiting on Focus IQ to do the focus group. I was wondering, since there is already the senior center in Coppell with a Latin population, what can we do locally by tapping that resource, the senior center, and capturing some of the thought process you guys have already generated to validate or even start to prioritize some of the things we could look deeply into in the next few months until April?
The problem with the senior center has been closed because of the coronavirus for months. So I don't know if it's really feasible to talk to them, because they're closed. They've been closed for a month.
They have been having.
They're doing Zoom.
They're doing Zoom. I am attending at least 3 functions of them per week. I've got one on Friday. Financial Fridays haven't skipped a beat.
Yeah. So I don't know if we could. Subu, they organized luncheons and things, for vendors, the hearing aid and the whatever scooter. My question is, and this is the question for the city folks, could we organize a brown bag meeting where our committee would talk to them about this and get their feedback?
Or is that kind of outside of our scope and something we want? That was part of the idea of getting Future IQ involved, was to maybe do a little more professional job than we could do, but I don't know.
In all honesty, to be brutally honest in terms of the village, if you look at the concept of intentional and you look at the concept of allies, that would be a pretty passive role to take. I think the buck stops and starts with us. That's an expectation of the diversity and the allies approach. And I think that the research shows that you must be intentional in creating that community. And I know that's why I'm investing my time.
Hey, Bart, let me tell you, I am a facilitator at UT Southwestern here in Dallas. So in terms of professionalism, I'm not worried about that. We are all professionals out there. The only thing I'm worried about is time commitment. We all have full-time jobs and all that. So if you talk about that, I'm definitely, that is a constraint. But in terms of professionalism, we're all having jobs and all that, and I'm not worried about that. Yeah.
Sure. Not to imply we're not all professionals on here. Although I guess I can point a finger at Peggy since she's retired now. But
That's right. I served my 22 years.
You can be our first survey.
That's right.
Professionally retired. That's good enough.
That's right. But yeah, I mean, Celebrations is another senior group that I'm a member of, and I've already attended this week 3 things that they had, and everything from exercise class to that thing that I sent out to Bart and Russell and to you, Maria and Danielle, that Zoom overview of the terraces, which was a high-rise. Y'all wanted more information on a high-rise 55 plus independent living community, and so I did attend that. Very interesting. The buy-in for that is very large. The entrance fee is huge, but it's and also, so I wanted to at least let Matt know about that, because it's 8 and 6 stories, but 3 of the stories are underground because that's where the parking is. And those units allow for 1 car. They include 1 car parking. And so the parking's underground. They have 5 restaurants in that place.
What's the name of it?
The Terraces. It's by White Rock Lake, and it's actually run by CC Young, and it's a 22-acre. So that was the other question I had for you. Do we have 22 acres anywhere?
I know the answer to that.
Very few areas.
So don't you also have a restriction on the height here because we're close to the airport and stuff like that?
Possibly, yeah. It depends where the 22 acres are. And so they have 3 high-rise independent living places, but they have 5 restaurants on site. They do allow other people to come and use the restaurants. They've got pools. They've got exercise rooms. They've got it all. Movie theaters. Faith-based areas where people can go for services. I mean, they have it all. But the buy-in, at the very least buy-in, was $375K, and it goes up to $995K buy-in to have an apartment, and then you have a monthly charge on top of all of that. And the monthly charge is quite steep too. It's like over $3,000 monthly. And then yes, they have a lot of amenities, and they do have transportation in a 19-mile radius. So they're over there. 19 miles will get you to North Park Mall. They're right there off of White Rock Lake. And so, it's cool. They have 4 physicians on that actually office in their community on the 22 acres. So you have 4 doctors, and then you've got their staff, and you have a small little lab, and they will take you to doctor's visits for your, for non-GP stuff, for your, specialists. It was, it's interesting, but it's extremely expensive. And when we talked to the developer for the 55 plus community, and he talked about financial arbitrage of, you've got to have the pricing to a price point where somebody sells their big house and then puts part of their money to supplementing their income when they retire. I don't know how many people in Coppell could sell their house and then buy in for $995,000 into an apartment and then pay $3,000 or more a month.
Wow.
And that $3,000, at least at St. Joseph, my mom gets 2 meals a day. But at this place, you get 1 meal a day for your.
That makes no sense.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. That's an affluence program.
Right.
And one where people don't eat.
Now they did have one.
I like to eat.
This is the Terraces, and it's their newest one, and they have an older one there that's a lot cheaper to buy into. But there again, you've got to have somebody selling their deal. And it is a continuing care community, so they do have assisted living on site, and they have memory care on site. So it's like St. Joseph in the fact that you just keep graduating to more need.
Well, and to that point, Peggy, I kept trying to search, and maybe it's just too broad of a term, but I was trying to find the stages of a senior's life, right? And really, when I came down to it, I tried to put together this giant matrix, and you think of all the different circumstances that people have, and it really comes down to, it doesn't matter what age you are, you're either at full capacity, you have some sort of limitation, or you have very limited capacity. And whatever we come up with on that medium, long, and even some of the villages stuff, I think the villages at most can help you with the full capacity to some of the limited capacity, but it can't really touch on any of the things past that. And just when we put together the bigger plan for the seniors, we just have to make sure we allow enough, like you said, St. Joseph doesn't think there's not going to be a need over the next 20 years to have another retirement community like that, or assisted living community. But we just have to, when we do the longer term plan, put in place that we're going to have housing options for all three of those so that people can graduate. And whether that is we start embracing group homes or something to where they can kind of fill both that middle and longer, more needed nursing care in a different way or something. But anyways, we're getting on tangents, and let's get back to what we were doing.
But that was what I learned when I went to this seminar. I learned that I'm never going to live off of White Rock Lake.
I'd like to just touch on what Russell said, though, because I think it is part of the due diligence, and that is that there should be some sort of a model that identifies that spectrum. It's a continuum, and I think that we need to outline what that was. So an assumption that it might look like on that continuum is to say, from a population perspective, growth and being landlocked, that there is a belief that the long-term solution doesn't need to be reinvented. It might be repurposed when it ages, but that's not something where this is going to result in a proposal from this team to manage the expectation. So that really is a short-term response, right? Because we still had to address it in the strategic pillars. And then the second piece of that I heard was that in that continuum, it's probably very important that we insert then the content, the data, the artificial intelligence that supports those layers, so that it's implied that we visited those things, but we plot it in the number of years that it requires to be revisited and assessed based upon where we are population-wise and rezoning-wise, right?
Great idea.
Yeah, exactly.
So it seems like we have our two focus areas that we want to focus on as far as providing input and options to council, which are aging in place, which we're going to hear more about next month, as far as city incentives, potential city incentives, and of course the villages model, which we've heard about previously, and I know a lot of us like. Was there anything else we wanted to include on that working list at the moment?
Did we want to include the shared housing perspective as it touches the village concept?
That matchmaking perspective part of it?
Matchmaking, yeah.
Yeah.
What exactly is the difference between the co-housing and the house sharing? So I think explicitly spoken house sharing, they all live in the same house, whereas the co-housing would mean many houses, you live independently, but you share some extraneous aspect.
Yes.
Yeah, so some neighborhoods are designed as co-housing to where the backyards may all, like, you may walk out and you have a shared backyard or, you know, fire pit or whatever. It's almost like it's a communal, more like a Italian village piazza kind of style living where you're all coming out and sharing that common area. Some in a more dense situation might be you have a shared kitchen with different, you know, living quarters off of the shared kitchen or something. Obviously, COVID makes that less and less desirable, but that was a concept that was pretty high on the list until all that started hitting. I remember we discussed some of that in the whole 2040 vision kind of things in one of the working groups. But that's the main difference, is just it's really a roommate situation where either you're sharing the rent or you've got somebody who owns the home and then they're bringing in somebody else to live with them. And it's just trying to help them. Because I think a lot of the challenges we all face is that, you know, our networks aren't as big as they used to be. We don't go and know everybody in the community, and we don't know who has what circumstances. And so if we can be a matchmaking kind of facility, because I have special needs kids, and because of HIPAA laws, I could never know who in Coppell has special needs kids unless I went to an event for school or, you know, for Special Olympics or something like that. And so trying to find kids that were at the same level of my kids, which were fairly highly advanced special needs, was very difficult and almost impossible because of that curtain that we put up in society. And so I think that's where I'm coming from, is the whole sharing part, because I think seniors have the same thing. They may not know that 3 streets over there's somebody who just lost their husband or their wife, and they could find somebody that can help them get through that time financially and emotionally and everything else. So
is the co-housing model something that the city could facilitate in some sense, because they have a good idea of which pockets and what clusters? There may be some organic cluster there where this is even possible.
I guess it is possible. Who did the report on co-housing?
Yeah, let me see.
Maria and Mani.
Yeah.
Maria, what was your thought on co-housing in Coppell?
We lose Maria.
Still there, Maria.
She's there, picture-wise.
Yeah. No.
Maria, are you on mute?
She is on mute.
Well, maybe that's one we circle back on in a future meeting, discussion.
The only thing that pops in my head is I remember, you know, especially since we're talking 2040, as we get to maybe less car ownership and, you know, people have shared alleyways and things, there might be a way to start reconfiguring things in the future. But right now, because of just we're so built out, that it's hard to reconfigure our homes to take advantage of without just buying up a whole neighborhood and then rebuilding everything. I think was the bigger issues right now is we're just too built out, kind of set in our ways, setting our positions with the homes.
Okay.
Oh, you know, one other thing that I learned from them is they had the 19-mile radius. If you need to go further than 19 miles, they are partnered with Grandparents Go and Lyft. lift within Grandparents Go. And Russell and I ran across Grandparents Go from one of the villages.
Cool.
So that kind of came back.
All right.
That was a good
Okay, so
affirmation.
sorry, Yvonne.
Sheila, what'd you say?
I said
I
that
was
was
just
an affirmation of your strategy.
Sheila?
I was just kind of listening to everything, and I understand that we're whittling it down to just a couple of options from this list. But I am also hearing from other members of the group that they're not clear. I just think there will be more comfort if we can determine what we're going to communicate to the council. Are we going to communicate we've ruled these things out and we're going to focus here? Or are we going to communicate this is where we want to start and we have other options potentially still on the table? So I think all of us would have a level of comfort to understand clearly what we plan to communicate next to the council, since that seems to be an absolute priority to do that in Q1.
I thought we were going to do that, and this is some low-hanging fruit that we know we can put a bow around it, low-hanging fruit. The rest of it, we're still researching. Here's some things that we're looking at, but we need more data and stuff. So it's kind of a stair-stepping approach, so that they at least see that we do have some low-hanging fruit. We haven't spent the year doing nothing, having nothing that the city can actually implement if they wanted to now.
More of an update meeting.
Just having some manner of deliverable or ideas we can pass along. Yeah.
And I think it's part of the challenge that we who've been on the board are having, is that in future IQ, I think can really help refocus this, is that it's hard for us without having really working sessions around this topic to think about housing 20 years from now, and to think about how our community is going to be shaped and the technology and everything that's going to be around that. And so what we have found, since we were given at the beginning of last year, we were kind of given that one pillar out of the Foard pillars. There was the one focused, the board wanted us to focus on 55 and older housing. And so that's kind of what we spent our whole time on. And we didn't really touch on any of the other pillars, which are much more future based. And I think the plan has to be much more thought out, much more diverse. And that's what we're trying to just give something now for that 55 that we were kind of tasked with, because we really feel good about these few things. And then everything else is much more forward looking, much more 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. What is the future going to look like, and what should we be planning to do as a city? And we need help with that. And I'm glad Mindy and everybody's getting Future IQ back involved.
Well said. Any other discussion on this particular topic? I think we at least have an outline for what we want to look at in the next couple of meetings.
But Sheila, did that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not confused, and it makes sense. We want to kind of move on from the 55 plus focus to the more futuristic focus. But what I was sensing on this call is that some people felt like some ideas were being yanked before we heard the voice of the customer. And I thought it would bring comfort that we had alignment and clarity on what we would be communicating to the council. Will we be communicating we're only focusing on this for the 55 plus, or we're going to focus on these areas, and then with more information, we'll maybe fold some other ideas in? That's what I was sensing just listening and being a part of my first meeting here. So.
Yeah. No, and you're correct. I think that was where our confusion and our lack of clarity on how we were going about this. And you're exactly right. I don't think we're taking anything off the table for that future plan for 55 and older, because I don't think we're touching on all three of those phases that I talked about as in that continuum of a senior's life. Because some seniors live to 92 and are total functioning and they can drive. Some of them at 75 can't. And and we have to account for all of that to meet our goal. And what we're going to push forward in the beginning is not a comprehensive plan for that entire continuum. And a lot of these other things that are on the list that we were kind of bantering back and forth over can still be on that continuum and could be on the bigger plan. So hopefully that makes everybody else more comfortable. And if not, then I'm just going to be quiet now. I think I've done too much talking.
Thank you, Russell. No, and I'm not confused. I just want us to be on the same page about what we're planning to communicate as an update to the council. I think people in this group would feel better about having that clarity. But thank you, Russell. That was helpful.
Thanks.
Very well.
Tim, I just sent you a link of what a visual would look like of that continuum. And I think it'll prompt some additional thought in that is a very fluid, continual process. So I sent it so that you could at least see a visual. Maybe it would help with this conceptual, because I understand the importance of the consultant, but from the 2040, Russell keeps going back to it, we pretty much had those pillars outlined and the community participants were active. It's not a passive role.
I'm glad you found this, because I haven't been able to find something that I really felt good about. And
this is excellent.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I loved it because of the layering effect, and it really showed the variety. And let me tell you, to focus on one thing is not a bad thing. The idea is what are the key things you're going to focus on, that your community is prepped and ready, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about prioritizing. And when you do that, we can earmark and say, today, St. Joseph provides this. Today, our current religious community provides this. In the future, we know we have a gap and we'd like to perform these consulting services. So I think it can affect scope and it can affect our direction. So thank you.
Good.
Okay. Any more discussion on this topic? A lot of very good discussion. I do appreciate everyone. All right. Agenda item number 8 is future meetings. Discussion with Mindy.
Okay, so y'all covered a lot of this already. I wrote down some of the topics. This was at the December meeting that I believe you all mentioned you wanted to see at future meetings. So I'll go through that, but then we can kind of lay out our plan on how you want to tackle them. So we were going to study the AARP matrix for determining if your community is livable for seniors, I believe. So I was going to bring that at one of our back to y'all at one of our future meetings. I believe Maria requested a study on areas that are prime for redevelopment in the city. So we'll bring that back to a future meeting. Y'all wanted to start diving into working on a plan for villages for Coppell. And so we will have that back. I know there's been a request for a presentation on the 55 plus higher density developments. And unfortunately, I have not been able to find a speaker yet, but I'll keep working on finding a speaker for that. So those are the things I had written down previously.
Mindy, this is Peggy. When I talked with CC Young after I sat in on their whole presentation and everything, Russell Cruz is their board president for CC Young, and that's the high rises. The Terrace is their latest one, and they have 2 others that have been there for a long time on their 22-acre high-rise area. And they did offer him to us if we wanted to talk to him, and he's into the 55-plus independent living, high-rise density type of thing. So if you want, I can send you, her name is Sarah Halfordy, and I'll send you her contact information, and she will work with you to get to Russell Cruz, and he can tell you how they look for land, why they settle where they settle, some of the economic things. because I guess I keep bringing back the money part of it, because when we researched all those 11 ways of 55 plus housing or systems for the folks, basically some of those are driven by an outside company that says, hey, I want to build a 55 plus community and I want to build it in Coppell, and then they come to you. And we've not had any come to us. And so there must be some sort of economical thing or some sort of way of looking at it that prohibits it or makes it more conducive in the areas where they are building these places. So anyway, I can send that to you. And this Russell Cruz is their board president, and he's been with them for a long time. The company itself has been around for 99 years. And next year in 2022, they will be around 100 years. So they have a lot of experience.
Okay. Thank you, Peggy. I don't know, after the discussion tonight, if this is something that's still high on your priorities of having someone come speak in the near future on this, or if y'all want to delay it a little. I'll leave that up to y'all. So those were just the topics I've written down at the December meeting on some things you all wanted to bring back for the group to discuss. So I'll just kind of open it up to y'all now on other future meeting topics that you want to cover, and if there's kind of an order in which you want to cover these things, so that we can prepare the agenda appropriately for you all.
Well, the one thing that I think he could lend us, or that we could learn, is really what they are looking for land-wise and what they're looking for in the number of people they have to entice in order to even want to come here or want to. They're certainly not, I get it, they're not the only 55 plus group, living type place that there is, but they would know what the formula is for that. Because even if every citizen in all of Coppell says, I want a 55 plus high rise here with 5 restaurants and all that stuff, if Matt can't find the land and we can't make the numbers work by what the standards are, then we could pay IQ or QI, whatever their name is, IQ, we could pay them a lot of money to run all these focus groups and all these questions. And at the end of the day, we don't have the resources to make it happen. So I think we have to be somewhat realistic. And I think by having him come and speak and having him tell us what the criteria is, and then having Matt take a look at that criteria and say, okay, maybe we can meet it here, here, and here, or I just don't have anything.
And maybe partnered with that study for areas that are prime for redevelopment would help also in that discussion. Because I think that is part of what Future IQ will challenge us to do. Not just think about what's available today, but, where are there options that the land may not be there today, but could be in the future due to redevelopment options. But then that plays into the financial model, clearly. So it all dovetails, absolutely. So okay, thank you for sending me that. Thank you in advance for sending me that contact information. So any I guess I want to see what the group wants in terms of what else y'all want included, and kind of how you want the next meetings to look like in terms of how you want to dive into some of the things y'all discussed tonight to prepare what you're going to present to council. So.
Okay, so for future topics, this is Yvonne. Some of the things that I couldn't find out there when I was looking was I didn't find the role that grants could play. I didn't find anything out there from HUD. And then I really didn't see anything that I felt is a movement in general, which is anti-aging. So at some point we have an overlap in the 30-somethings going forward in the whole anti-aging movement that is upon us. And it's going to become very prevalent as it relates to alternative medicine and where we've gone with virtual medicine as a consequence of COVID. So I think it's worth at least having it on our radar somewhere and a review of it to say, this is what we researched concerning that anti-aging, because functionally the continuum shifts with an anti-aging movement and depending upon your population.
Okay.
Because we could become, an example of that would be the healthiest city in the United States. Just an example.
Hey, Mindy, this is Subbu. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So one of the things I was thinking about is what we can do locally and all that. So in terms of that, I heard Peggy and some other folks mention about the villages close to the White Rock Lake. If you all have any contacts, do you think it's a good opportunity for us as a group or a small group go and visit them and see it? It's called Go to Gemba in the lean methodology. Go and see for ourselves and make a report out of that for the council when we talk to the council. Tell them, hey guys, we also went and checked out XYZ. These are the pros and cons we see, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess that would be gauging y'all's comfort level on going as a group. But yeah, we could, once I get that contact, I could ask that question if there was an opportunity for us to come and actually tour the facility. And maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable with all of us at the same time, but maybe we could figure out some kind of schedule of smaller groups going to see it. So I'll certainly ask that question.
We're immune to COVID, Daniel and I. You could volunteer.
Yeah.
If you need some scouts, we can go.
Okay.
They're doing. Well, I don't know about the place that he just mentioned, but they are doing virtual tours.
Okay.
So they're doing virtual tours. So theoretically, we could get a virtual tour.
Yeah, and Mindy, I would like to hear the presentation of six floors is not a high rise. I mean, in Coppell it is, but I worked in a 53rd floor. That's a high rise. But I would like to see buildings, but evidently that option of $325,000 is you're going to be paying the same as the house you downsized from. Could we find another it would be a building kind of 55 and plus that is lower priced. I mean, I think the whole thing about Margaritaville was that it gave you options that went, from 100 to 500,000 or whatever. I continue to be very curious to hear a developer of a more dense residential option for 55 and plus. That's not a 20 floor building. I continue, and I know Matt is going to do a presentation, but I feel there can be revitalization of certain zones that are industrial or whatnot that could turn into that if the city changed the zoning or made it more flexible. So I would like to hear that urban whatever building, I don't know what to call it. So I continue to ask for that presentation if you can continue to research.
Sure.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. Did I just to make sure I heard what you said, you don't want a tall building, or you do? Oh, you do. Okay. What Peggy was talking about was a 6-story building, right, Peggy?
Yes, it's 6 stories on one side and 8 stories on the other because it's built on a large hill.
Right. Well, in urban development, that's not a high rise. That's just more dense. But then I understand in the Coppell way, it is a high rise, because if we only permit 2, then 6 and 8 is huge. But I think we need to explore those multi-family options. And there's some that are houses. They're like big houses. I've seen them in Little Elm, that they look like a castle, and it's actually a multi-home unit. I mean, it has more density of habitants in there, but it doesn't look like a building. It looks like Versailles, like a palace or something. So, I mean, I would like to hear the developer. So it's not us talking to the developer and then coming, because I want to ask that developer questions. You know, what kind of incentives have you received in other cities? What would make it, you know, attractive for you to come and invest in our community? I want to pick the developer's brain, but I would like for him to come and listen to all of us instead of us going one-on-one and researching. I just think the synergy of us as a group is important. I mean, I think the village presentation was very cool, but I would like an urban multi-home developer and lower scale, because it's not 300. I think we should give options to the seniors from 100 to $500,000, depending on what you want to do, you know.
Sure. Okay.
And I just want to let you know, my COVID affects your brain. I still cannot smell or taste, and it's not because it's a stuffy nose, but my nerves, my brain are inflamed. So I might not be making much sense, and I might be using a lot of words, but you know, I'm thinking in Spanish, changing to English, and then I've just been through a job interview of 6 hours. So, but I wanna say I would like to present. I would like to have contact in a developer in this context.
Sure.
That has options from 100 to whatever.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, Mindy, I think the CC Young, their older units that they have, their older high rises are a lot less for entrance fees. Okay. So it's possible that he meets Maria's criteria. If not, though, the developer that I talked to and brought back the notes, he said that he would come and talk to us. We just needed to try to get on his schedule and see, you know, when he could zoom in.
Okay.
But he's done several senior places, or senior 55 independent living places all over the state of Texas.
Okay.
My other question, though, to the group is, because I don't know if we should do this or not, but so in the village concept, right, we know that there's a piece for the Citizen Patrol Board. There's a piece for the volunteerism that the allies construct. There's a piece for the senior center. Would it be a good thing to have a meeting where all 3 of those entities are there to go over what a village is with our information, so that maybe they could add to us with what they know? In other words, the senior center, the people who run the senior center are very close with all the seniors. They know all this stuff. The Citizen Patrol police officer, I happen to deal with him because I'm an HOA president as well. And so Paul Rodriguez would kind of know about, you know, the people who are old and constantly calling the police department for one thing or another, or maybe the Citizen Patrol knows about that. And so I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a form of research, as well as more in-depth information on the community needs.
It definitely could be, and we have the resources and tools to do that through polling. We just have to be consistent in the manner in which we collect the data and ask the questions and stick to their facts.
Should we do that, though? Should we introduce this before we've ever even talked to council about it, to get input from these entities?
I mean, honestly, that seems like something you would do in more of a a planning and pre-implementation phase than where we're at, which is just a pitching the general concept. So it might be premature.
Well, I would like to add, I like Peggy, your idea, because, mea culpa, I actually do not attend many Coppell board meetings. At that hour and that day, I'm usually burned out. This is my volunteering for the city. But maybe we could have like a mock-up or something with someone that goes to those meetings, and they could tell us what kind of questions are we going to get? How should we prepare for that? And if those folks tell us, they're probably going to ask, well, what is the role of the senior citizens and the senior center and this? We should maybe meet before, so that if they ask us that question, we could say, well, we did present it to this and this and this, and this was their feedback. Because remember, they're elected officials, so they're covering all their constituents. But I've never presented anything in the council. I don't know the council members. I don't know what's dear to their heart. But maybe we could have, Mindy, some of the city folks that have presented a number of times, and they know. I mean, after you've presented to the council several times, what one's going to ask about sustainability, the other's going to ask about economic development. I think it would be useful as we prepare to present to the council. Do frequent questions, what could they ask? How do they like it to be presented? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, sure. No, Matt and I present to council fairly regularly. So I provide guidance on presenting to council. I guess the question at hand is it something you want to ask council if they're interested in this first before you go out and do the other part? I think this is the question you're asking, Peggy. Do you check with council first to make sure they like the idea before you go meet with these other groups, or do you meet with these other groups and get input first before you go to council? So, I'll leave that up to y'all and what you want to do. I think we've talked about having a joint meeting with city council. We've talked about having a joint meeting with planning and zoning. We brought Lacey McKinney, who is the in charge of this, or the manager at the senior center, in, but it was her really just presenting to us. So maybe if you want Paul Gonzalez from the police department and Lacey McKinney and maybe even somebody from the fire department that's doing regular calls, just to bring them in to ask questions, or to whatever y'all want. We can arrange anything you want. So you all tell us what you want to do, and we're happy to try to accommodate it. So
I think personally it is a good idea to talk to the others first before we take it to the city, because otherwise you just go to the council and say, what do you want to hear? We go back, and if they don't like the idea, we don't talk to them, but then we may be missing on some information or certain viewpoints that will come out of the other groups. And I think it'll be good to talk to them first before we take it to the council.
I agree, Kamesh. And something that's really cool that I saw when I did Leadership Coppell is that we have like a joint emergency response system between 3 cities, and I forgot who they are, Coppell and
Louisville and
Branch.
Right, fine.
I don't know who they are, but there's this secret place where they take you. It's this bunker, and they can answer the calls in, I don't know how many seconds. It might be interesting to know, what if we had, a house of six bedrooms, and we had seniors in all of them? I don't know. Is that a concern, to have them, to have the seniors more densified or whatever together? I don't know if, I would like for Matt and Mindy to think, okay, before a decision like this is made, what kind of studies or support do they ask of you employees, an environmental concern, a health concern, a zoning concern, kind of go through a checklist so that we're better prepared. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think honestly, you could really go either way. As someone said, council doesn't necessarily have a specific idea of what they want for the solution for senior housing, but they'll know what they don't want when they hear it. And so you do hate to spend a tremendous amount of time on something that they're going to say, no way, we have no interest in this in Coppell. But at the same time, the more information you have from groups to answer questions council might have, the better you are to get their real, the more they understand, the more information they have to really make a decision on whether that's something they want or not. So, that's why I say it's really up to y'all on which order you want to go in. I would probably do the research first before I went to council personally. But at the same time, I don't want y'all to feel like that's a waste of your time then, because you've done that, you've invested that kind of time and energy, and then you get to council and council says, no, we're not interested at all. I don't think that would be the case with villages, for example, but I don't know. So I put that out there for y'all, really to decide what you think is best. But if it were me, I would probably do the research first and then go to council. So,
and in all honesty, this is Yvonne Silva. I'm a financial controller for DFW International Airport. So on the regular, we present these kinds of things monthly to the board. So that said, the fact is that every idea we present, even if it's a no, it just means not right now. So that's very important to note, that these ideas do not gain any kind of leverage from the power of intention if they don't surface. And I think that's the beauty of having a community organized committee. So from a zoning perspective and from a fire code perspective, I think we could apply just some common sense to know that's a longer term, right, evaluation. So I think the matrix approach is really solid, and it's something that they will be very familiar with. And if we just give a current feasibility analysis that says this is a long-term solution because it affects zoning, population, if we're talking about a real high rise, a change in philosophy, are you philosophically aligned, might be the best that we get. Do you want us to continue researching? So I think we have the experts on hand and a year's worth of work that allows us to tee up the first presentation as it relates to quick hits.
Do we have a date when we're planning to take this to council? It's a question.
No, it's we had an idea of trying to get it done in Q1, but there's nothing solid or determined.
Okay. Is there an expectation from the council when we should be presenting?
They don't have any specific date in mind on when y'all will be bringing something forward.
Did the smart cities already present?
So they've done a presentation to kind of lay out their plan for tackling all of their items, but not any specific report, I guess I should say. So they have, I can't remember what they called them, but they called them something very specific where they have like 5 different areas they want to cover, but nothing specific about any one of those 5.
Have you been asked to inform about our committee or no? Okay,
no,
so they pour us in and then they know nothing about us.
So we had, well, it's been a strange year, first of all. So I think some of the things that were a focus before maybe have just not fallen off their radar, but maybe not as high on their priority as before. But we did have in fact, I talked to Bart about potentially presenting a while back, just to give kind of an update. So typically, each committee will do an annual presentation to council, just to kind of talk about what work has been done during that year, and if there is any kind of plan for what going forward. Or again, this year was strange. We were all kind of getting our legs under us in this committee, so I don't think there was an expectation for one last year. I do think we should present to them some at some point this year, whether that is just presenting what we've already worked on, or if it's presenting, concepts we want to move forward. I don't think that has not been, that was not our charge, that we had to have a specific proposal by a specific date. So I would say yes, this committee is definitely going to want to present this year, but there's no time frame that we have to fall under. So
I would propose doing it in this first quarter, so that we can show the work we've done, and we can, and also the new members, can be part of what we've. I mean, add value, the new members. But I would propose to present this first quarter. But
I would too, because Maria, I think as you pointed out before too, if the council thinks that we should be going in a different direction, this is their time to tell us that before we go all the way down another 6 to 9 months, and then they tell us because they didn't know what we were doing.
Well, I think that's a good goal to have. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So then let me just, instead of, we've got a lot of discussion, a lot of things that we will be covering this year. So I guess I just want to hear from you all, specifically what you all would like to see on the February meeting. So do you want to bring back the villages, start really diving into the villages discussion in February?
I think if the goal is to get something out Q1, then yeah, we'll need to.
I would suggest that we talk to the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Department. They're the ones that are running a government, run village, like we were talking about with the city running it. And he has a lot of experience, and he gave us some of the he gave us a lot of information to me and Russell. But he said that he would come and speak to us if we wanted him to, so we could ask him specific questions. Okay, so you'd like to see if I'll reach out and see if I can get him on the February meeting? Yeah, I'll send you his name and contact information, and because I don't remember it offhand. I think it's Michael, and I know his last name starts with a K, but it's a very long last name. And so I can send you his information, and then you can reach out to him. And he'll remember that he talked to me, and Russell wasn't on the call, but I shared it with Russell immediately after, but he'll remember that he talked to somebody from Coppell at least. Okay, perfect. So do y'all want that to be the sole focus of your February meeting?
I certainly wouldn't mind if you had the info available about potential city incentives for aging in place.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind hearing about that. That's our other bit of low-hanging fruit that we ID'd.
So who collects who gets the census data and how is it managed? Is Future IQ going to do that all by themselves, or are we going to collect the numbers within us, or somebody in the city distills all the data for us?
I'm going to let Matt answer. Matt was he's our resident census expert.
Right. So what we'll do is typically what we do is we get the census information. We'll update our website with that information. But I'm sure you might have, additional questions in terms of something that might not be on the website. But we'll have all the data that we can available, so we can put that out on the SharePoint site if we can get access to it. I'm just kidding. Just put it out there and give you guys access to it. We currently we have a subscription for an annual or for a private entity that provides us. It's Nielsen Claritas. They provide us the information, but we have to adjust that, because they don't necessarily have our population correct, and so we take a few numbers and manipulate that data to make it more realistic to what Coppell really is. So I'm looking forward to April when we get the true counts and seeing how accurate we were over these last 10 years in our assumptions. So we'll see.
Thank you.
All right, so it sounds like we have a plan for next month. We've been talking new business on and off, but is there any other new business to discuss before we call it a night?
The only thing I would ask you, Cammie sent it out, but the task force roster. So if you'll just check that and let us know if there are any changes that need to be made. And we'll pass those on to the city secretary's office so that they can make any of those changes that y'all have. So that's our only request.
All right. Sounds good. Does anyone else have any new business to bring up? We've all had enough, I guess, for the night. All right, fantastic. Well, good to see everyone. Happy New Year. And since we're at the end of the agenda, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.